so much, Barbara. Welcome to ITL Voices. Thank you for taking out the time and joining us here today. Barbara, first things first, what motivated you to pursue law?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I'm so glad that there's an increasing number of venues for ITLs to gain some semblance of a relationship once they get back to Canada and begin the licensing process. So what made me pursue law in the first it's a loaded question or a very significant question for many of us, I'm sure. But when I was thinking about this question, for me, I'm a very structured, logical, process-oriented person. So that's the career that I wanted to pursue. Those were the kind of skills that I was looking for, the kind of background I was looking for when I was looking for a career to pursue. And I just thought law would be the perfect mix of that logic, that structure, that process, along with the creative thinking that you may need to utilize in order to fix solutions for your clients, for your businesses that you're working with, et cetera. So with that meld, I thought law would be the perfect career for me, and it ended up being that way. And it's been a few years since I was called to the bar. I was called to the bar in 2016. And it's been a personally fulfilling and enriching experience for me thus far, and I'm quite enjoying it.
Thank you. So yeah, I was reading about you, and you graduated with a degree in political science and history, which completely answers the fact that you want something which is creative from University of Toronto.
Yeah.
Then you moved to abroad and studied law at the University of Birmingham. What did your background in political science and history help you in the study of law?
So this may be an unorthodox answer, Ash, but for me, the background in political science and history helped me foster my writing skills. And that inevitably incredibly helped me in law school, first of all, and in my career right now. So when you're writing responses to opposing counsel, when you're drafting, those writing skills are required during your career, that political science and history background really helped me. A very unorthodox answer for sure, but the critical thinking and the writing skills I picked up in undergrad certainly helped me for sure.
So did you feel any difference in the method of instructions, like in legal writing, as you pursued your studies back in UK, and any difference when you studied here in Canada?
Surprisingly not. So yeah, the University of Birmingham is located in the UK, I think you mentioned. And for me, at least personally, I didn't find there to be too much of a difference. Much of the case law that I was studying in the UK, I ended up having to know when I wrote the NCAs anyway. We used one of the very same textbooks I used in the UK, I had to use when I came back here. So I didn't find too much of a difference, no. But for sure, I'm sure there are certain differences with other courses, but with the ones I took, I didn't find them.
Oh, great. Yeah, so in fact, ITLs are, a lot of ITLs do come from UK and then pursue their licensing here. So let's chat about your licensing experience here in Canada. How many NCA exams were you assigned? Did you find them challenging?
Yeah.
Would you like to share some advice with those currently in NCA process to those?
For sure.
Yeah.
So Ash, I was assigned 7 exams when I came back to Canada.
Oh, wow.
And I mentioned one of the textbooks that I was utilizing when I was in the UK. And I was really hoping that because my cohorts and I took that course in the UK, when we came back here, we wouldn't have to take the course. The NCA exam. It was constitutional law, by the way. Ended up being assigned that exam to take anyway back then. I don't know if it would be the same now, but it was a few years ago. So I graduated from the University of Birmingham. I came back to Ontario. I grew up in Mississauga. I grew up in Ontario, so I knew I inevitably wanted to come back here anyway. I applied for the NCA process. I got assigned 7 exams, and I decided to take all 7 exams at the same time and write at the same time. And concurrently, I was also working full time. Coincidentally, also clerk for a firm downtown. because I knew my main fundamental goal was I knew I wanted to get the NCA process completed right away. I wanted to get it done and over with. I'm sure that's a feeling many NCAs feel when they get back to Canada or want to go through the licensing process. So I worked full time. I worked 9 to 5 as a clerk. I studied that entire time for those 7 exams. I wrote all 7 and I passed them in my one
Wow.
shot, which thankfully, I looking back, I don't even know how I attempted to do that with a full-time job, but I did. So I guess when you get right down to it, my advice that I would give to NCA students right now is if you want to get those exams done quickly and right away, once you come back to Canada, it is possible to do it in a quicker amount of time. If that's what you so choose, that's what I chose to do. Of course, split it up, go ahead and do that as well. But number one piece of advice, get them done sooner than later. You'll find that, life takes over and the process could drag over the years, which also happened to some of my cohorts. It took them a few years to complete. If getting those NCAs done is something that you want to do, get them done right away, schedule them right away, study for them right away, and just get them done and over with so you can go through the process.
So can you mention all these 7 exams? Because I guess you gave these exams back in 2016, and coming from a common law jurisdiction, which was UK, I guess 5 exams are now assessed for people coming from common law jurisdictions.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. I wish I only
Yeah, that's actually nice. Yeah. Would you name them if you don't mind, like which were the exams that you had to write?
Sure. So I was called in 2016, but I wrote the exams the year before since I had to article. But if I remember correctly, I know for sure I had to write constitutional. I wrote admin because that was the one everybody warned me about, and it turned out to be completely fine. It was one question. I don't know if it's still the same now, but it was a few years ago.
It's the same now too.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, I did recently give admin, and it was one question for me as well, which was for 100 marks, and it almost comprised of everything that the entire admin book had, from judiciary to everything, the exceptions. Yeah,
you literally just write down everything that you learned and you pass the exam.
Exactly.
Many people warned me about that admin exam and told me it's incredibly tough. It's just one question, but I honestly thought it was one of the easier exams that I had to take. So it's constitutional, admin.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I think criminal was the other one. I believe I took corporate as well. Foundations, I don't know if that's still around, but I had to write foundations.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
And unfortunately, Ash, I can't remember.
Professional responsibility.
Oh yes, ethics, professional responsibility. And I can't recall the last one, unfortunately.
It's totally fine. It might have been torts or maybe tax.
It was,
I'm assuming.
Torts, who knows? But I will say that out of the 7 I wrote, I don't know if it was the same for you or for anybody else listening, but foundations was actually the one that I found the toughest. But I remember looking at the exam and flipping it over and thinking I was in the wrong section of the room. I definitely was taken aback, but it ended up being fine. But for anybody listening, I would just say, get the exams done. Don't listen to, well, obviously listen to the good pieces of advice, but the pieces of advice that detract from your studying, maybe don't listen to that, but don't listen to the ones that seem negative and say that exam's incredibly hard, really, really hard, you may not pass, etc. Put that behind you, think positive thoughts, and I'm sure you'll do fine.
Honestly, it is very impressive that as you were working full time and you did all the 7 exams in one go. Thank you so much for that, and motivating us students who are listening today. My next question to you is, from your articling to your current position, you have preferred working in-house and also working as an associate lawyer at a consulting group currently. How did you decide so early on that you would like to go in-house?
At first, I'll say that I love working in-house. I don't think I'll ever go back to private practice. Well, I don't know. I should say I'll never go back, but it's certainly a great experience for me for sure. But So I wrote the NCA exams and I ended up articling in-house. So I mentioned earlier that I worked full-time for a firm. I was all set to article at that firm downtown. It was a real estate and estates firm. And lo and behold, I was also offered an opportunity right after writing those 7 exams to article on Bay Street in-house for an investment management company. So I ended up leaving that other firm and taking this job in-house, which is how I ended up in it. Articled in-house, completed that whole process, and got called to the bar, got rehired there as an associate counsel. And I've been in-house ever since. So that's how I fell in to the in-house role that I'm currently in now. It's just the sect of law that I've been in since I got called to the bar. But taken in as an articling student in-house, most of my practice was on M&A work. So I would say about 70% of it was mergers and acquisitions, 30% of it was general corporate commercial. So it was a fantastic learning experience for sure. But nowadays, my work is a lot more generalized. It's not just M&A, even though a large section of it is. So it's definitely a learning experience every day for sure. A few years down the road, it still is.
That's great. One interesting question. It's difficult to find an articling position in-house. How do you identify these kind of positions? Because mostly law firms provide with traditional forms of articling position online. But for a lot of students, it's difficult to navigate through this process. How did you navigate and how did you identify your in-house articling position? That would be a great insight if you can share.
Yeah, so I would have 2 pieces of advice there. Number 1, demonstrate your usefulness. And number 2, demonstrate your practicality. So by usefulness, I'll give you an example. So when I was working as a law clerk at that firm, I took it upon myself to teach myself certain real estate softwares that, so for example, I don't know if you're familiar, but TerraView, Conveyancer, and various other softwares that may be utilized in a real estate transaction that I didn't really use while I was a law clerk, but I just learned how to use it just in case I needed it later on. And one of the reasons I actually got hired on as an articling student in-house a few months down the road was because they needed somebody who knew TerraView, Conveyancer, and all the softwares that I took on myself to learn, that many law students coming out of a Canadian university may not have had the experience of knowing, or may have learned or had experience utilizing just yet. So I was able to demonstrate to them that I was going to be useful to them with their upcoming closing, their upcoming transactions. And that's how I ended up getting that in-house role over a Canadian law grad, which I'm always so thankful for to this day, that my principal took a chance on me, because I was able to demonstrate that I would be useful to that transaction even as a student. And number 2, demonstrate your practicalities and demonstrate how you can support the business. So I told them how much I love to write and I ended up, and how much I enjoyed process, how much I wanted to learn corporate governance work. And it was how I ended up learning minute book management, corporate governance, annual returns, things that you need to do every year for a business. And that's something that I've taken to my job even now. Those are skills that I've taken to my job in-house even now that you need to utilize when supporting a business. So usefulness and being practical and showing your additional strengths would definitely help for sure.
Thank you. That was a great insight into it. A very typical and cliched question is, how does your average day look like at office in an in-house counsel firm?
Yeah, so Ash, I don't know if you heard the same from the same answer from other in-house counsel, but it looks different every day. It definitely looks different every day. One day you could be handling an employment law related matter. So I'm corporate counsel for Canadian Dental Services Corporation. We are we're based in Toronto, but we run our business is across Canada. So my job is to manage the legal department across the country, and many of our employees are not in Ontario. So some of our employees are in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, et cetera. So, I mean, Monday could be an employment law related matter for one of the hundreds of employees. Tuesday could be M&A work. So Canadian Dental Services it sounds like a dental company, but it's actually it's a pseudo acquisition company. We invest in medical and dental businesses across the country. So Tuesday could be M&A work. Wednesday could be you have to finish something for corporate governance, write a policy, something like that. Thursday, another employment law related matter could come up, et cetera. And on top of that, you're managing your legal department, you're liaising with external counsel. Overall, I would say, Ash, that it's different every day. That's probably why I enjoy it so much. Some of my work is transactional, a lot of it is relational with internal stakeholders as well, which is why I enjoy it.
That is very interesting, honestly, like working on different type of issues every day. And yeah, in this particular field, I guess. So do you work with doctors and like on particular machinery, or like since it's a dental company, how is interacting with your clients, like which is your particular company?
So the client itself is Canadian Dental Services, which is well acquisition company. But when we buy the business, I work with the dentists quite often.
Okay.
It could be on an associate agreement for an associate that we're taking on at that particular location. It could be on an employment related matter. It could be reviewing licensing agreements for equipment that we purchased. For a variety of matters, Ash. It could be a question about a regulatory matter. So dentists in Canada are just like lawyers are obviously regulated provincially by a regulatory body. So regulatory matters come up and things like that. Sometimes many of the questions that come to me aren't even law related. And many in-house people may find that answer very relatable, but sometimes they come to you with a question and it's more of a business question than a law question, but they just want to bounce it off of somebody. So part of being in-house counsel is also building those relationships with internal stakeholders, and it's a really enjoyable experience for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess lawyers is not now limited to legal advice. They are being thrown a lot of business questions as well.
For sure, for sure. Just buy this piece of equipment, and how should I know? But sure, all about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you have the agreement, send it over. But part of the appeal of being in-house is definitely getting to know the people that you're working with on a day-to-day basis as well. So that's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, this leads me to my next question. So what do you feel are the best traits in a lawyer? Like, since you are also addressing to all the business questions, what else skills one lawyer or a fresh graduate should acquire during the process, particularly those looking into who wants to go into in-house? Would you say it's easier for transactional lawyers to make the transition to in-house, or is it, or if a litigation lawyer wants to like transition? Like, these are like a couple of questions. So if you can answer for me.
I can see why people would think that a litigation lawyer may find it more difficult to transition in-house. I can definitely see that, but I think if a fresh grad or a current lawyer is thinking of going in-house, they should consider that there's various types of in-house roles as well. So there's my type of in-house experience, which is generalist, working for a business. So that's one type, but there are other types of in-house experiences as well that are actually looking for litigation backgrounds. So there are various delegated administrative bodies, administrative authorities within Ontario that have legal departments with litigation backgrounds. So I actually just mentioned one a few minutes ago. So regulatory bodies, for example, the RCDSO, the FSRA. Actually, I think FSRA just recently changed its name, but they regulate banks, mortgage agents, et cetera, or something to that effect. And the other regulatory bodies that OMVIC is another one. RICO is another one. There are
Okay.
a number of organizations in Ontario who are regulatory bodies, for example, who have legal departments internally, and many of them with lawyers that have litigation backgrounds. So there is the term in-house, but there's different sects within that title. So if somebody was looking to go in-house, there are definitely additional options that you can think about.
You are involved with various organizations such as Global Lawyers of Canada, FACL, and Filipino Canadian Lawyers Association, to name a few. How do you think people coming from diverse backgrounds should effectively integrate themselves into the jurisdiction they are moving to?
You know, Ash,
Especially Canada, in context of Canada, yeah.
for sure. So, you know, Ash, this is also something that I also struggled with when I came back to Canada. I had no network. I mean, I had the network of my cohorts who came back to Canada, but many of them were from all parts of Canada. Some were in BC, some were Ontario. We were all over the place when we came back. So my network was quite minimal when I came back. And my piece of advice there is just to start and to get out there, because one of the most difficult decisions I ever had to make, or one of the decisions that made me the most nervous, wasn't a job interview, wasn't writing those exams, but going to a networking event by myself a couple years ago, before COVID, obviously, by myself, knowing absolutely no one, and just walking in there and introducing yourself to somebody and building your network intentionally. My advice to ITLs would definitely be to just start. I know with COVID, in-person events are obviously not currently happening right now, but reach out for cold coffees, reach out to people you don't know and try to build that connection intentionally. One of the things I mentioned in another interview and another article was in the last year or so, I've actually met more people in the legal community than I did when I first got called. And one of the reasons why is because if there was somebody that I wanted to get to know, if there was somebody's career that I wanted to know about, or just somebody I wanted to introduce myself to, I always asked them for a cold coffee over Zoom. And
yeah,
I don't think I ever got a no. So one of a few tips I have there is, number one, reach out. Number two, if they say yes, set a time frame. It'll just, are you free for a 15-minute coffee? If the other person knows that you won't take up 2 hours of their time, there's probably a good likelihood they'll say yes. 15-30 minutes of your time top. Send a calendar invite and have questions ready for that person. If there's somebody that you want to get to know and if you want to understand their career. So number one, just start. Number one, get out there and intentionally connect. And number three, in terms of getting involved with organizations in the legal community, for the longest time, I thought it was incredibly hard to get in and figure out, how do I join a section executive? How do I join the board of this? How do I join the board of that? But it's actually quite easy once you build those networking connections, or if you just contact them and say, I want to volunteer my time, how can I help? I know that there are various, for example, the OBA, take student volunteers, for example, if you aren't a lawyer.
yeah.
Many organizations do that. So I would say just start, connect, contact them, and be really intentional about it. Don't push it off, and start sooner than later.
Yes, I got associated with ITL network the same way. You just need to approach, not be hesitant. And yeah, it's actually very easy once you start networking. And I guess that's the risk that every person needs to take in life, to just put yourself out there. Yeah.
For sure, for sure.
What advice would you give ITLs at various stages of re-qualification process? Though we have went into detail, but any general advice that you would like to give to our audience today?
Yeah, I think if there was a piece of advice I would give myself a few years ago when I was writing the exams and going through that whole process, it would just be to build relationships and really get involved with the legal community here in Ontario. And I know I say that generally, but a few examples I gave in the previous question. apply here as well. Get involved and build those networks, because there are so many reasons why you should do that. Number one, you're contributing to the legal community. Number two, you can hear about jobs that may not be posted online. Number three, if you're in private practice, it could be a great referral network for you. And number four, you're getting to know other lawyers. If you have questions off the record, or if you have questions that you just want to bounce off of somebody. For example, me, I'm the only lawyer in my organization. It's a great way to meet other people. So generally build your network and get involved with the community. And it's something that I'm really glad I did early on, for sure.
That's great. Thank you so much, Barbara. And it was such a great experience learning about how you started your career here in Canada, moving from UK and doing your re-qualification NCA process. It's really impressive. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thanks, Ash, for having me. And I'm so glad that you guys are doing this. I'm looking forward to hearing all of the episodes that you release.